Welcome back! Welcome back to the Gentleman's Sit Down. We're an untraditional podcast.
Trying to be traditional gentlemen.
And today, Joshua Callahan tells us the story of
That's right.
Joshua Callahan.
I have a story to tell. I am a storyteller. We are all storytellers.
Yes. It is written.
And so it shall be done.
Oh.
Are you doing a finish my quote thing? I don't know.
I was kind of doing like, you remember Game of Thrones, Daenerys is talking to her slaves. Well, her servants when she's married to Khal Drogo. And like, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
They say something like it is written or it is said. I don't know. Who cares? That show had a terrible last season.
I read the books and watched the show, and it's like all jumbled together, having stepped away from it.
Yes.
But I guess we're here for this story.
Your story.
You know, I don't know about you when you thought about your origin story, but the whole where to start, it's tricky.
Yeah.
Tricky, right?
Oh, it was
a little tricky.
A little tricky.
It was
I mean,
tricky.
yeah.
You know, and then when looking back on it, everything is in hindsight. That's when you start slapping the themes on it and like, oh, there's connections here. There's connective tissue. It was really complicated for me to, not complicated. These memories stick out and these are turning points. And that's kind of what I snapped back to, right? And that's what you did. You had a very distinctive turning point, I know, for yours. Having a little bit of a longer life, I had to think about what was that origin story? What was that beginning? I think I've landed on it. And I'm going to share that with you, all of you, and you.
And me.
And them. Today, now.
And I'll be the interviewer or, yes.
Yeah. Ask the questions. If you don't get a visual sense, ask me. I'll try to hone in on it.
Of course.
Yeah. So, my beginning doesn't really begin in the beginning. But I'll go back to the beginning. But I'll explain this. I was looking back, and the biggest turning point was around 1985. I was 10 at the time. Do the math. And I'm 46 now. I was 10 then, born in 75. We'll get to that. February 1st. 1985.
Yeah.
My story begins
with
with
a great year.
It was a great year. I
I
mean,
wasn't
Goonies
gonna lie.
was released.
Oh.
Talk about Breakfast Club.
Metallica was on
Back to the
tour for
Future.
Ride the Lightning.
What's that?
Metallica was on tour for Ride the Lightning.
Did not know about Metallica at that point, but I fell in love with Metallica.
Didn't Predator come out that year?
I don't know.
Something like that.
I didn't do a deep dive. I dove into some movies that kind of signify my life and in this time, specific movies, and I wanted to make sure I released right. So Goonies was a big one, and I remember Googling that. That come out 84? No, it was 85. So we're in the spring of 85 where I begin. My story begins with a vision quest.
Yes.
I didn't know it was such at the time, but for reasons I'll explain later, I went to a Catholic private school, and I was in 5th grade. I was finishing out my 5th grade. And the priest would take us on a retreat with the kids from that classroom and with the nuns.
Right.
And we would go away on a retreat, and this is the first time we did a guided meditation. Very hippy-dippy for priests to do this, but it was 1985. The year of love. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's 69, actually. Anyways, so the guided meditation began with us as kids, 10-year-olds, 9-year-olds, or different classes there, starting with breathing and just calming us down. And it was you're at a place. You get to determine what that place is. It's the whole safe place thing.
Right.
Mine was an island. I flashed back. I tried to create trees, woods, but it kept on coming back to this like island and beach island, and there was a waterfall. And then he said, imagine an object. There's something that you see there. Spend some time with it. Are you being given something? Are you leaving something? Or did you discover or find something? Give us all these clues, land on it. You determine it. And you meet somebody. Somebody is giving to you. What is that image? Is it an animal? Is it a spirit image? Give us some examples. So my vision was very much beachy kind of island, not desert island, but it was a beachy island, waterfall, beach trees, like palm trees or whatever. I never really been to one, but that's how I imagined it from movies, I guess. I don't know. The person I saw, I never really landed on one. I mean, come on, I was 10 at the time. It was like Jesus. It was my mother. It was other people, and I can never really land on one. And it just became like an angelic picture or person or image.
Figure.
And the object was a treasure chest. Island makes sense, I guess. I opened it, and there were 3 brilliant, shiny gems. And I got to touch them and lift them. But it was very clear that I could not take them. It was made very clear to me. I think in the meditation, excuse me, this is already making me emotional.
Take a little sip.
Oh, my Lord.
There you go.
No, nee. Okay.
It's like 3 different religions in one.
I know. Anyways, it all makes sense. So I put them back in the treasure chest. I'm Roman Catholic, hence the Jesus figure.
Jesus.
So I put them back. I put them back in the treasure chest. I leave them on the island, and I take off, and we have this whole thing. And then we come out of that. So that was like my vision. Like, what does that mean? I don't know. I look back on that and I think about it because it's very vivid. And oftentimes now that I know more about meditation, I'll go back to these gems. Come to find out later, what I decide or determine that they are these gifts that I received throughout my life. And they center around this phrase and stuff that I learned from my upbringing through the Catholic Church, being a part of it. We weren't really a religious family, but definitely, being Italian, Irish, coming from Boston, chances are you're Roman Catholic. And, you don't need to roll the dice on that one. We were. But like I said, we weren't really religious, but for reasons I'll explain, I was in a Catholic private school. Anyways, after this vision, he sent us out into the trees and woods with our friends, and we had to find an object. Didn't have to be something that we found in our dream, but we find something else that it's a symbol. And then at that night, we would talk about it over the campfire. Like, what does it mean?
Right.
I found a piece of driftwood. I picked up a bunch of things, but this one I held on to till after when it was time to go back, and I still had it in my hand. And it was this dark brown piece of, not this, I just touched it because it's wood, dark brown piece of driftwood. And it had a fork at the end of it. So it was thick base, a less thick going out to the left and forming a Y, and then still a strong, solid, yet thinner branch coming out to the right. And my explanation for that was the whole piece of wood was my faith, my philosophy. The thicker branch going off to the left was family, how important family was to me. And the one going off to the right was friends, all related to love, kind of my heart. Looking back, and I'll make sense of this again as I talk more. the things that I began to discover that I was balancing when I look back was mind, body, spirit. And in the Catholic faith, it's like mens sano, corpore sano, spiritus sanus. Sound body, mind, and spirit. Probably sounds familiar because everybody says mens sano, corpore sano, which is, healthy mind and healthy body. And it's like a quote for a lot of sports. Like, you got to have this wherewithal, healthy mind in order to achieve excellence in sport. That's like their big motto in a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I added this third spirit one onto it because, it's Catholic. That's what I got out of my Catholic faith. And the idea of the Trinity set that, the Holy Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Believing that three things could be one was important to me. And I would balance these three things. And so I didn't understand that when I had that little guided meditation, or when I was on the walk and I picked up the branch. I just knew it was important. I knew it was something I got to write a story for the ideas that I had. I had to define what I was learning in these symbols and define what they meant to me. This is the first time I was ever put to that task.
So is this when you kind of discovered you had an artistic spirit?
Yes. My faith very literally and linearly led to my creativity. That's what I found out. And I often joke about this, and I was going to say this as part of telling the story up to this point. Being an altar boy was my first acting gig.
Wow.
It was, you have line cues, sound cues. You had to ring the bells at a certain moment. You had lines you had to say. I mean, everybody did, but especially as altar boy. You had a costume, the white robes, and you had scene partners, the other altar boy, or the priest was the lead role, and you're doing this thing. And then you would do different plays, because when you had the benediction and you do the signs of the cross, and you had this incense thing, and only the senior altar boys could carry this thing and flip it. And it was like, it made you cough, but you had to build this character. You were an angelic cherubic person.
Yeah.
You were this icon for innocence and faith in the church, walking around in this white robe. I learned, especially in the Catholic faith, a lot of it is theater. It is so theatrical. And I think if you talk to any Catholic, they'll agree with that sentiment, because I've heard it before, But so clearly it led to my creativity, and it was a direct result of, I interpreted it moving along, and I started interpreting more things. And, and that was in the spring of 85. The summer of 85 was very important. But before I get to that story, I'll go back a little bit to the beginning. So, like I said, born February 1st, 1975 in Boston, Massachusetts. There's a connection. Massachusetts. Yeah, Massachusetts.
We grew up around the Sox town.
Yeah. I didn't know who they were at the time. I just did my own, up to when I was 4. So 4 and under, you can kind of do whatever. I have vivid memories. I have one solid memory where I remember saying stuff. I remember what I said. I remember I was like half naked, and very specific details walking around the room as a child. And I was going to wake up my parents in the bedroom because I had just turned 4. And wake up, it's my 4th birthday. I knew it was my birthday, February 1st. It must have been February.
Is this your first memory that you can remember?
It's my first vivid.
Oh, okay.
Because when I think about my first memory, I go further back, and I wanted to share this one too. I had a memory. This babysitter used to watch me. Her name was Rowie. Was back then. Weird, unusual name. She had 2 other kids, and we babysat us all together in this big house. I remember it was a big house. And I was always energetic, active, getting in trouble. And one time I was getting in trouble, I was put into this dark room. I was sat down in the middle of this big, dark room. I don't know if it was an attic or what or where. There's no light coming through. And my punishment was to sit in the middle of this room and think about what I had done. I think I had hurt one of her offspring. I don't know. I remember there was a girl and a boy. I don't know. I don't know exactly what I did, but I remember being in the dark, and it's the first time I learned about imagination and I thought about it. The things that were scaring me the most, I was thinking of. There was nothing there. There was no sound. There was no nothing, but I created it and put it in there with me. And I realized that I must have been 3, and I probably didn't piece it together or define it. Like I said, I wasn't put to the task of defining it, but I remember having this realization that I was scared by the things that I was creating. And
I went through similar stuff.
yeah,
Man. I used to do that too.
yeah. And so it's definitely a memory, but it's in a specific point of time, and it wasn't so detailed, but I remember that. But also attached to that day, maybe why it sticks out in my head, I remember my parents picked me up from that day after being at the babysitter on a bike with a seat in the back. And I was very stressed because of this punishment put on this bike. And I remember we were riding around town. I was like, oh, this is fun, carefree. This is great. Oh, I'm back to feeling good again. And then my uncle Mikey sees us in the streets of, we were in Somerville at the time, or outside of Malden. I lived in Malden or whatever. He's like, hey, let me ride Joshua on the bike. Come on. My dad was like, nah. Come on, Joshua. You know, riding down the street, and my leg gets caught in the spokes of the tire, and it hurt. Yeah, I didn't break a bone. I was like, I don't know how I didn't, but I remember crying like a fiend. My dad remembers rushing and picking me up, and it was the first kind of instant that I'm going to save my son kind of thing with my father. Picked me up from that, yelling at his brother Mikey, and calling me down. And I think because those were kind of together, it put like a bookmark on that day. I remember those visuals very clearly.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wait, how old were you here?
So that must have been around 3. I don't know. It was before my 4th birthday. That's probably my earliest memory was that day. I remember bits and pieces. I could remember going to the store with my Aunt Gina and picking up candy, but it's only because there's a picture of me with her. Oh, by the way, I had strawberry blonde hair, palest, whitest skin, like a snowfall, and it was just ridiculous. So yeah. Irish kid, had freckles, everything. But I had a picture of that moment. I remember what we were doing that day, and Gina had a memory. So I think that was like a shared memory, and I kind of remember that, bits and pieces like that. But as far as my own memories, being alone, bike spoke, and then this 4th birthday. And what was key about this 4th birthday is also when my life changed significantly as a child, another like big turning point. My dad was in the Air Force, or had just joined the military, joined the Air Force. And so we had to move. I found out later that he was in the Air Force. They moved, he got out, and then gave me my name on his way back to while I was getting born. And then he went back in or something.
Well, what made him go back in?
I'm not really sure. I think it was just for us to get out of the city, get us from Massachusetts, move around, get distance from stuff, because, Massachusetts is really expensive. They had lived in California for some time, also really expensive, but they loved the life, but they were on their own. Too far away from family, from my mother to feel comfortable. So we got to move down to Florida. So remember, this birthday was around February 1979. And then that same time of year, moved to Florida. So from the winter to the heat stinking swamp that is Florida. Yeah. I remember it was great. I loved this adventure of moving. What's that? What's Florida? And I didn't know, but I knew that I hated it as soon as I landed because I got a sunburn that first day. I remember the smell of dead, rotting citrus because we had a grapefruit tree in the back of our place that we didn't know. And we never had a yard in Massachusetts. So how do you take care of vegetation? We just let it live. Yeah. God will water it and take care of it. But the fruit would fall and just die. Yeah. And so it smelled like rotten grapefruit, citrus. And also on days off, my mom would take me fishing. And you ever seen a horseshoe crab?
Yeah, of course. I saw him in Massachusetts.
Demons from another dimension. You saw him in Massachusetts?
Yeah.
I'd never seen a horseshoe crab before. until
No?
I got to the Gulf of Mexico and we went fishing in Tampa. Yeah, it's like it looks like a Nazi helmet with a
Yeah.
spiny
With a little, yeah.
tail.
Yeah.
And if you lift it over, it's like these long roach legs with
Yes.
like they have hairy legs. It was from the underworld, the down under, or whatever they call it, Stranger Things or something.
Yeah.
But that's what it's crazy. And the heat and the humidity and tornadoes. Yeah. So, it was a tough time.
You ever
But
have to deal with hurricanes while you live down there?
no, but I remember 2 times with tornadoes. I remember being in the house, flipping, being under the bed because of tornadoes passing through. And they were supposed to be like destructive ones.
Wow.
And it was because it was attached to a hurricane. I don't remember that. The hurricane. I just remember tornadoes were passing, like several of them. And I have a very specific story about going to see a movie with my mom, Sleeping Beauty, and a category 5, tornado was passing over at this very point in the movie. Shit you not. You can ask my mother. She'll confirm this story. We're in the theater. Maleficent or whatever, Sleeping Beauty, dies and comes back in a wall of like flame and fire, and the doors of the theater fling open from this tornado passing over the theater. Luckily, it was a very strong, old, firm built brick building of a theater.
Yeah.
Doors flung open. We saw the dark wind and everything blew around. Everybody roared. Some kids were crying. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was part of the 5th dimension of this movie. Oh, the seats move. No. We walked out to the front because everybody knew the tornado was passing through, and we saw it pass. It was just like a dark cloud, but not in the sky, like over everything. And as it passed, you would see things and
like things being flown around. Oh.
I don't remember specifically things being flung around, but I remember it being covered by a black wall and then being able to see dimension and stuff as it passed by. Like things coming into focus. Like it was a black wall of darkness. And then we all went back and finished the movie. So I have very specific memories, all very scary of Florida. If it wasn't for like Busch Gardens and Disney World, I don't know how I would have turned out, because that was like, we got to go to Busch Gardens on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And its whole theme was a dark continent. It was very imaginative, escapey. And Disney World, who doesn't love Disney World? Disney World is Disney World,
Yeah.
It's a place where
That's
dreams
crazy. You had a tornado come to your house. All you had to do was hide under your bed.
That was the protection level. It's like
That's
nuclear blast. You go under your desk, like that's going to do anything.
Yeah. I was going to say, like,
hide under your desk, kids. This will protect you from nuclear holocaust.
Yeah. That's crazy, man.
It's insane.
That's definitely.
I remember Hurricane Hugo. This is skipping away. The biggest hurricane I remember was Hurricane Hugo in '89.
Yeah.
And that was in South Carolina. And that's where we moved to after Florida. Thank God, because South Carolina was a turning point for me. That was in '82. So I was in 2nd grade, going into 2nd grade, at a public school. And I say that because I remember it was about 3rd grade. Well, first off, I got to mention before I move on to South Carolina, that the saving grace in Florida, so I joke about Busch Gardens and Disney World, but it was really my mom's attachment to her family. We always made the road trip up to Massachusetts to see family, whether it was in summer or Christmas, one or the other, sometimes both. I don't think there was a year we did both, but you're talking about a 24-hour drive. Luckily, I was the only child. And that's where I bought my books, read, and did games. Those drives were very telling for me. It's where my kind of imagination sprung from. And this idea of visiting family was very important. Always drew us back to Boston. Those family trips to Boston were so important for me. It signified the importance of family. I just knew it. I didn't think about it. I just knew it. We laughed around the dinner table. We ate. Holidays. I loved Boston. I hated being in the country and stuff. I always wanted to be in the city, or that's what I thought in my head. That's where all the energy's at. Why are we living so far away? And I knew it was because my dad was in the Air Force. But it was wonderful to have those trips, because there would be weeks at a time. The first couple of days would be set around traveling to see everybody. and cramming everything into these days, going to different houses. And I remember my aunt on my dad's side, she had these 3 Doberman pinchers that were always very scary. So I always dreaded going to her house. I mean, they had all these cute names. Like one was named Lady and one was Princess or something. And there was just these two, like a 3 or 4-year-old, I was probably 4 or 5 at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Just so
They're
big,
giant, yeah.
like, and pointed, and again, demon looking. They look like hellhounds. That's what they were. And my aunt Lori she was so gruff, you know. She had that Boston accent, and and I'm not joking. Her voice was probably actually deeper than mine. Like,
Wow.
it was just ridiculous. But I have like these vivid, very vivid memories of all my visits. It's mainly on my mother's side of the family. We hung out with and stayed with my grandma, Nana Rose. I mean, definitely talk about creative juices, energy. I got it all from her. She's always up for a laugh, always up for a joke or trip or a trick on somebody or something, or a trip to the city, or she was kind of adventurous. And so that was truly important. And it's around remember some movies that came out that kind of excited my imagination and interest, but I didn't know that's what I liked. They were just fun movies. Like Flash Gordon came out in 1980. I remember my first movie was going to see Star Wars in a re-release with my dad. And then Empire Strikes Back was also like, I think 80. And Superman came out. And I remember I had the Superman book, film book with the pictures. And on the 15, 16, 18-hour drive up, I would flip through it. Same thing with Flash Gordon. I'd imagine myself in it. It was beautiful. Anyways, so that was, one of the biggest memories from Florida to really bring home the point that I hated it. I remember playing in the yard once and sitting in just a hill, having fun, actually not a hill, it's like a divot in the backyard of someone's house across the street. And I remember feeling a pain unlike any other I've felt before in my life. I was sitting on a fire ant mound.
Oh my gosh. What the hell?
About as many freckles I had on my body, I had ants crawling up my body and freaked out. And the whole idea that they bite more and they can feel your pheromones, totally true, because I was fine when I was playing. But as soon as I got freaked out or felt the first bite, it was over. I was screaming. My dad, again, swooped in. I remember him coming up, picking me up. My mom's like, throw him in the bath with cold water. We had to drown the ants on me.
Yeah.
Eaten alive by fire ants.
Jeez.
Oh, and another animal story. So fire ants only live in South Carolina and Florida, like in the South, the deep South.
Right, yeah.
But I never got fire ant bit in South Carolina. I learned my lesson. Anyways, I also remember a story of running away. I hated Florida so much. I remember packing my bags, and my mom called my bluff and okay, pack your bags, put all your clothes in your bag and leave. Bye. And I was walking out the back door. I remember very specifically, and the grass was tall. Kid you not. I was like, I remember having this discussion, like, I should just stay. This is ridiculous. I was going to turn back. I was going to go walk down the block and then come back. So I wouldn't go right back into the house.
Right.
But I saw this black racer snake coming through the grass and literally stick its head up out of the grass. And I found out later it was a black racer because I brought my family out. So that was a good excuse to go run back into the house. Saying, Mom, there's a snake out in the backyard.
Yeah.
I still had a Boston accent.
Yeah, the Boston.
And I had it through my whole childhood. So yeah, I wasn't, Busch Gardens, Disney World. Thank you, Florida, for that. Yeah. So then we moved to South Carolina. I was glad to put Florida behind me. And that was around 82, went to public school. And the reason why that was significant is because I said I was in a private Catholic school is a very real reason why that happened. And my mother was instrumental in that. And I always did good in school, but around my 3rd grade, I remember I had Mr. Mungo, and 3rd grade, we were in these trailers in the backyard of the building proper that was Shaw Heights. I remember this very distinctly. And I'd always cut up in class. Yeah, clearly a class clown. I made sounds. I made noises. I remember Jason Maynard. It's weird the names you remember from back then, but I remember his full name.
Yeah.
And we would always cut up and we'd make jokes and we would make faces when the teacher turned to the chalkboard and we'd be like, we'd get everybody to laugh and they would turn around. And it was like another acting gig. Like, could we just keep our straight face? Like, we were like, what? I'm taking notes, Mr. Mungo. What are you talking about? I remember one time, and I never knew this as a tactic to deter kids from not making noises. It's when they send you to the back of the class and you have to repeat the noise over and over again. That was, if I had fun making the noise, you think sending me and making people laugh off the noise, you think sending me in the back of the class to continue making that noise is going to stop me from making that noise?
Yeah, if you're like back of the class.
And I remember it was this sound. It reminiscent of a fart sound, but it wasn't. It was like the duck call sound, I don't know if I can do it in the mic. Something like that. So 3rd grade, back of the class, while he's trying to teach a lesson, you hear. Yeah, that stopped me from making a sound in class. It's ridiculous. Yeah. But my mom had a conversation with the teacher. She had to come in a lot and was like, Josh is very energetic in class. He's very distracted. He's distracting other students and stuff like that. So we want to put him on Ritalin, because he's a very energetic kid.
Ritalin? Is that like
Ritalin was something in the 80s that they decided to come up with, which nowadays students in junior high and high school ground that up and snort it like Coke.
What? Really?
Yeah. Or Adderall. Maybe they do that. I don't know all my drugs, but you can give it a Goog or whatever. But Ritalin back in the 80s was something they gave kids to calm them down. And my mom, luckily, she went to school. She's a registered nurse as an RN, and she kind of understood pharmaceuticals and stuff. And she's like, no, you're not giving my kid Ritalin. How are his grades? Oh, his grades are great. He finishes all his work. And he was like, oh, is he cutting up when he's done with his work? It's like, yeah. Then he starts to get the class riled up and makes jokes. Like, well, give him more work.
Yeah.
Give him extra credit. And I loved extra credit because in the sport, it's like, oh, okay, I get to solve this. I remember taking notes for a video that we watched, and I took these elaborate notes so I could pass the quiz. It was like a game. And it helped, but my mom didn't like that solution, that was going to be the first place that they went to. And I think I started, I remember, was it 4th grade? I started St. Anne's, I think, in the 5th grade.
Okay.
And that would have led me up to 85. I started that in 84, finished my 4th year. And I remember my friends back there. But there's a very important thing to mention here. My mom was talking to me about putting me into private school, Catholic school. I thought it was boarding school and they were sending me away. I didn't really understand the concept. It's like, was I bad? I'll be good. Like, whatever. But I remember those last couple of years, there was a guy, Brian Hunt, a kid, Brian Hunt. He was my bully, my tormentor and torturer. Oh. And I never got into fights. I did use comedy to get out of things. Yeah. I was very much, again, the class clown. I remember 2 people were fighting in the yard and I got between them, made jokes, and they were hitting each other and they punched me in the stomach and I laid on the ground. And I was like, wow, that was a heavy hit. And I remember everybody laughed and it dispersed the fight and we became friends. But Brian Hunt was somebody who always chased me and picked on me. I was like, why is this? And comedy wouldn't work. I couldn't get out of it. He was going to torment me at recess all the time. So then I told my mom about that. And I was like, okay, fine. We're going to send you to Catholic school because the nuns will take care of that shit. So
the nuns will take care.
Yeah. So Shaw Heights, the public school, was on the Air Force, part of the Air Force Base.
Right.
So St. Anne's was in Sumter, which is the town over. And I went there. First day in the bus, I had a seat to myself. No one wanted to sit with me. We made a stop in on the base housing, and someone gets on the bus, and it's Brian Hunt.
You gotta be kidding me.
Brian Hunt steps on the bus.
How the hell?
And he's looking around, and I could see he's scared. It's his first day. at the same Catholic private school I was going to be, because the conversation must have been with their family. Well, we'll take Josh out because he's being bullied and he's being distracted, and we'll give him focus.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan's picking on kids and causing trouble. We'll take him out of public school and put him in private school.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he comes up. I had a seat open, and I asked him to sit there. We looked at each other, smiled, and we became friends. And that flipped that story.
What the hell?
And it's the craziest thing.
Yeah.
And I remember him walking the bus. I remember the look in his eyes of recognition. We recognize each other. Mine was a little bit of fear, but a smile. I was like, you can have a seat. And it was like none of the picking on me ever or whatever happened. We were friends. And he became my protector at recess. We've never had problems after that.
Wow.
Because the nuns took care of it. But yeah. So now when we moved to South Carolina, another thing happened on the Air Force Base, the base housing. It really freaked me out and fooled me. I thought we were rich. I mean, both my parents were working. We were good. And I was the only child, But they moved us on base housing in the 5,000 area. That's what it was called. Because the addresses began with 5,000. I think it was 5200 Elder Drive. Yeah, whatever. And it was a 2-story 4-bedroom house they moved us in.
Right.
One kid. So we were moving into a mansion, is what I thought.
Okay.
And I felt like we were wealthy. We were good. We're set up. And it was because probably, I don't know, in the Carter years, they, after the Vietnam War or whatever, cut down on base housing or whatever. And they had all these empty houses that were just put up and new in Shaw Air Force Base. And Reagan came along and was like, no, we're going to bolster it up. And in the meantime, we got to move into this big place. And it was great. But that was around 82, 83. So they were duplexes. So these 2-story houses, 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath. And it had a copy, just like carbon copy of it, just right next door to each other. First family I met there was the Frutrells, Jerry and Terry. And we had a awkward meet cute. They weren't there that long, but it was the family that moved in after them that became a definitive turning point in my life. And it was my best friend at that time, Tom Tag. He was from New Hampshire, from New England, and he remembers this more than I do. But evidently, I lost the pot on my toy, and I was like, can you help me find my pot and my toy? And when he talked, he had the same accent I did.
Yeah.
And for him and for me, it was like, we're speaking the same language. It was like this Boston, Pac McCann, Harvard. Yeah. I mean, we didn't drive or anything, but it was like, the pot, your toy, the toy. Yeah, I lost my toy. It was like, it's a transformer. It's a transformer. It's a GoBot. Yeah, GoBot. Oh, we're walking around trying to find this piece. And we became fast friends, and we lived next door to each other. It was great. Sleepovers, whatever. But it was the journey in the woods that was very much a turning point. And I met him in it must have been around 84. I mean, you're talking about Ghostbusters, Gremlins, all these movies that came out then. And we would always go to the theater and watch movies together and play tricks on people and pranks and the shopette, which is the little mini stores on base housing. Stories for another podcast. I don't know. But we met, hung out, and we had the series of woods, and that became the map of this journey, this adventure, this kind of, we were both coming of age. It's definitely a coming of age story for both of us. I mean, I was 2 years older than him, so we weren't in the same school. We only met up when we were home. And so let me do the lay of the land of the 5,000 area. We lived on the top of the hill. There was a dip in the hill, a couple of places, and at the top of the other hill was another, the 4,000 area or 3,000 area or something. I don't know. But on this hill, it was a big hill, so we called it Suicide Hill. And on either side of Suicide Hill, the name that we gave it, on either side of Suicide Hill, because that's where we ride our bikes and go dipping and stuff like that, were these huge forests and woods. And we were going to map the woods. That was our adventure. And that's what we started doing it. We dabbled in the woods in 84 or whatever. And We'd go to the pool and try to jump off the high dive, but we're too frightened by it. But in 85, I have this friggin' vision at the meditation retreat with the priests and the nuns,
Yeah, yeah.
and didn't know what it meant. And then the summer starts, Goonies hits off, and that's a coming of age story. So I think subconsciously I was creating, or we both were creating this, we're going to have this story or whatever.
Your own
But we
Goonies
didn't
journey.
craft a story. These things really happened. And the big part of that story starts in the woods. Because most stories do start that way, right? Going in somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
At first, it became like little adventures. The woods behind our houses, across the street, actually, it wasn't our house, was the other way. We were facing the woods, so we could see the woods from my bedroom. And we would swing on vines to get over the canals and ditches there. And we found out very quickly that Tom had this penchant, he would always just fall in water. Like he would always leave the woods wet.
Yeah.
Always. He was the one we would swing on the vine would break and he would drag his leg in the water. It was like, it started out little things like that, but it definitely became a theme of us going into the woods. And you will find out later, like it was crazy. And so it was just these little adventures, mimicking things that we saw in movies and stuff like that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
84 was Temple of Doom. I remember that, like, because I love that movie, and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome and all these little adventure movies. But The Neverending Story. We talked about this, 1984, buddy.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a very integral year. But getting into 85, we decided we were going to get to the other end. We found deep into the woods, there was a barbed wire fence at the border of the woods, and it was the end of the woods for us. And there were houses there, and there was a dark trailer and had objects. We could see it, but we didn't know how to get over it. And it's like, we got to get there. We got to figure that out. We got to go to all the boundaries and figure it out. And I don't know where this came from, but it was Old Man Johnson's house was the house. And I don't know where the name came from. I don't think we created it. I think these kids, they were also bullies. And they're a few years older than us. Their name are Patrick and Tony. We used to call Tony Boney Tony because we're kids, and that's the first thing you do is you think of a nickname for somebody. Tom's name, for instance, he didn't like this. He always spelt it with an H, so I would sometimes call him Thom. Thom? Like, no, it's Tom, but it's spelt with an H, so it's Thom. And we would go back. His last name was Tag, but it had a UE, and I was like, Tag you? Like, no. It's just a thing. I don't know. But yeah, so Tony, Boney, and Patrick, I think they set up this stigma because that's where they would go and do other like big boy stuff. I don't know, drink, smoke, whatever. I don't know. But they wanted these kids to stay away. And so I think they created this mythology of Old Man Johnson's house, and he would shoot you if you were on your property, and he was this evil bad man.
Wow. It's
So
like
then
straight out of an 80s movie.
It is.
It's like
and we were living, and it was only in hindsight that I look back, it's like, man, I was probably piecing together like bits of these movies that we wanted that. And we just went out and played, but we were just journeying through the woods. And yeah, these kids created this mythology for us because they wanted to scare us away.
Yeah.
So that was our mission for the summer, and jumping off the high dive at the pool. Because we were frightened by it. Right. Yeah. But I remember we stayed away from Old Man. Once we learned about Old Man Johnson's farm, we couldn't get to the other side. We explored the other forest on the other side of Suicide Hill. It was a deeper, darker, more dangerous forest, bigger canals of water and waterways and, you know, creeks. But to us, they look like rivers. So we're traveling through, and it was the deepest we ever gone into the woods. And it was very beautiful. And it was I remember hills. I remember the trees being bigger and different, and then more open spaces. I don't know how far we went and deep into these woods on the other side of Suicide Hill, but this particular day, it was pretty far. And I remember coming to this clearing of trees, and it felt very cosmic or something, or, you know, it was quiet. and there were these two big pools of water, like on this hill, and two pools of water. And we purposely walked between them. And I remember I was in the front leading the way, and I remember hearing a thump.
Here goes Tom.
And I turn around, Tom wasn't there. I literally had enough time to say, Tom, where'd you go? Tom, where are you? Stop messing around. We would play tricks on each other.
Yeah.
And he came emerging out of one of these pools of water, blinking his eyes. Like he had completely submerged. I didn't see any movement of water.
Yeah.
I could not explain where he went.
Yeah.
I was only seeing him come out of the water like this. I mean, we weren't that short. It must have been a deep hole, but he went completely under. Come to find out he had tripped on a root and like went and
Yeah.
scared the hell out of me because I thought he was whisked away or whatever.
Jeez. So these pools of water, did they have like leaves floating on them?
Yeah, it was murky. To be honest, I thought maybe it was a puddle or something, like just water covering a surface.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't realize there were deep holes until Tom fell in one.
Yeah.
And we turned around and he emerged out of it. And he needed help and I helped him out and it was a whole thing. So we had to leave.
So he couldn't even touch the bottom?
Well,
Or was he
we
able to?
talked about it. I was like, how deep did you go? Like
Yeah.
you were gone.
Yeah.
Like there was no clue, no sight of you. There wasn't even ripples in the water I mean, he said it. He's like, I don't know if he made this up. He said, I saw things down there, and it's like, like he opened his eyes. He didn't believe that he fell in. I was like, what did you go to another dimension? What do you mean you saw things? And it's probably just trees and bushes and stuff and gross things that were in there. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what he says. I remember
Yeah.
maybe he embellished. I don't know. For me, I thought he was taken away by the woods.
Yeah, yeah.
So now we had to stop our journey in the woods and we had to start heading back. And we got kind of lost and turned around. And we came up to another clearing. And it was an open clearing and we could see down this hill. But before you got to this hill was another pit. It was like this big round pit. And we started walking closer to the pit. And as we get closer, there's a wooden stump before the pit. And we saw stuck in this stump a very clean, new, like silver axe.
Wow.
Like stuck in the stump. Like
Yeah.
we went up to that stump and we were like amazed by it. We were drawn to like, what is this? It looks new. It's not old. It hasn't been left here. And we're kind of whispering because we were scared and nervous. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
who left this axe here? And was he a giant? Because there's a big friggin' pit right there.
Yeah.
We hear a rustling, and all of a sudden, this person, this kid, this body, peeks out of the hole in a dirty white shirt, looks right at us. We were silent. We focused in on who it was. It was Tony Boney.
What the heck?
What was he doing in there? I don't know what it was. We looked at each other, yelled, screamed like kids, like, ah, and just took off and ran home out of the woods. Never explained why he was in there. Don't know what was going on. We never went back to that side of Suicide Hill.
Boney Tony was just in this hole.
Doing God knows what, and who cares? Never found out, don't know. He could have been uncovering alien spacecraft or dinosaur bones.
And let me just recap for myself.
Let's recap.
Boney Tony was
Correct.
the friend with the Patrick,
Yes.
And they were
the
the-
bully friends that
and-
tried to scare us away.
and they were the older kids.
that
that
set
were
up
probably
this whole
smoking
Old Man
cigarettes.
Johnson. Yes.
Okay. Old Man Johnson, leave our cigarette spot alone. And for some reason, Boney Tony digs a hole and puts a silver axe in a stump somewhere.
A brand new. So he bought that and there was no Amazon. He had to go to the store or go someplace. That was a brand new axe.
That's
So there was a moment I think I described where we paused, looked at each other, realized who we were. Tom and I look at each other, scream like girls, run,
yeah.
get home. And we're like, what the hell just happened? First you fall into another dimension of water and then Boney Tony's reaching out of the pit of hell with a
It's-
silver axe. I mean, this is like,
It's like
the
your
story
own-
writes itself.
Yeah, it's like your own Goonies.
It's ridiculous. So that was so we stayed away from that side of Suicide Hill for a while. So on the other side of Suicide, at the bottom of Suicide Hill, there was access to another part, but we knew we could get to it from another place behind our house. So
Wow.
we go back to exploring. We gear up the next weekend or day or sleepover, and we journey into the woods. And now we start down this clay hill where previously I rode my bike on many years before and hit a manhole cover, thus causing my face to bleed. That was a different story. But I specifically remember this manhole. That was a doom day. That could have killed me. But we passed it, and the pipe led into the woods. So we follow the pipe on top of the pipe. We're walking on top of it. And this is when we learned that predominantly all these canals and various things in the woods is actually sewage runoff. Gross.
Yeah.
So all the friggin' water that Tom was falling into is probably not good for his health.
Piss and shit.
I don't know. Most likely. So
Ew.
this pipe leads to the end where the bog of eternal stench is. Labyrinth, anyone? Yeah. That's how we envisioned it.
Yeah.
So it leads out, and there's like this huge lake of dirty, gross water and a fence. And we thought, our thinking was we could access Old Man Johnson's house from getting on the other side of this fence from a different route. And we could avoid the barbed wire. This fence, we could crawl underneath on the other side, but we had to get to the other side. So we couldn't jump from the pipe to the island that was there's an island in the middle of this bog of eternal stench that would allow us to access the gate, the fence. So we go down to the left, and we notice at the left there's a wooden pallet or crate that we could create a bridge to the island, because this border of the sewage beach water was closer. So we do that. Now we're on the island. Tom sees across these stalks, these like bamboo stalks.
Yeah.
Sorry. Getting ahead of myself. So he's like, I can do it. I can make this jump. I was like, I don't know, Tom. That's a pretty big chasm of sewage water that you have to jump over. I didn't say that. That's a lot of water you have to jump over to get to the other side. Are you sure? He's like, no, I can do it. I'll get a running start. It's like, okay, man, I believe in you. Go. He runs across, jumps, grabs onto the stalk of like the tree, the small tree that was there. It's like, I did it. Eyes wide open, looking back. I did it. You got to be very careful, though. Crack. And the small tree, whatever he's holding onto, breaks. He does not move. He thinks the tree is going to keep him up, so he hugs it. As he falls straight back into the water. The reality that it's sewage water scared the bejesus out of him, because he jumped right out of the water and on back onto the island and rerun. And we're going that we have to go back home and clean up at this time. There's no more adventuring.
Yeah.
And I look back at him, and he's like, leeches, 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 because we had recently watched Stand By Me, which is the coming of age story of the kids going in and getting eaten by leeches. And so he thought he had leeches on him because he fell into a body of water.
Yeah.
A la Stand By Me.
Yeah.
When I look back at him going, leeches, 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 half his body is completely soaked and the other half is completely dry.
What the heck?
It was the weirdest thing, because the way he fell was sideways and then he jumped right back up. Yeah. He didn't fully submerge this time. He learned his lesson from the dimensional pools of water in the other forest.
Yeah.
So that was funny. So we never revisited that fence or that side. And we were getting frustrated at this time. We were going to do it. We knew how to get to Old Man Johnson's house. And we knew we could get through it if Boney, Tony, and Patrick weren't around. I got to dispel this fear that we had of Patrick, though. There's a story that tells us it's actually kind of funny. So,
okay.
I mean, Boney, Tony. So we were walking down the street in the 5,000 area.
5,000 area?
That's the name of the place where we lived. It was because where we lived, it was like 5,000 Elder Drive or 5,900 or 5,200 Elder Drive or something. But it was called the 5,000.
Right.
So walking our street on Elder Drive, we were in the back and we saw Boney Tony walking with what we thought was his girlfriend. We knew we had to investigate. So we sneakily follow him. We're going to see where he goes to. This was after him jumping out of a pit of total despair with an axe and us screaming like girls.
Yeah.
And I very vividly remember this. He was also wearing a white shirt this time. I think he had a thing for like white t-shirts. Side note, I'm just realizing that. We're walking down Elder Drive and we're strategically hiding behind these big, in the 5,000 area on the Air Force Base, we have these big, huge green trash cans. We were small enough to hide completely behind them. And we were getting bold. We were no longer on the side of the houses. We were on the same sidewalk. He was several feet in front of us, but we were hiding behind trash cans. I was behind one in a driveway, and across the driveway, Tommy was hiding behind another one. And I remember this moment. I'm sorry.
Take your time.
Let me contain myself. I'm getting emotional here. Turn the laughter into tears. Now turn the tears back into laughter. I see him in front of this trash can. I'm noticing him like we're really close. Like they're like right there. They stop and they're talking. Like this is close. And I noticed Tom reaching over to find something. He says he saw a penny on the. He says he saw him. Sorry. He said he saw a penny on the ground. Afterwards, I asked him, "Why did you do that?" It's not even going to be funny anymore. He reaches down to pick up the...
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Namaste.
So he sees a penny.
He goes to pick it up. He's leaning forward. I was like, what is he doing? And he lets out this rip-roaring fart that is so loud. Like I'm talking like echoey fart. Not even kidding. Tony Boney and his girlfriend heard it. And they turn around. I duck behind the trash can. He ducks behind his trash can. I don't know what they must have thought. Like, what was that sound?
Yeah. What the hell, bro?
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense.
You and Tom are cartoons, bro. It's like
We're cartoons. Like we didn't know, and I don't know if they stopped to investigate themselves to see what that sound was, but I think they took off, and when they were out of the way, we ran back laughing and giggling. So they probably realized it was one of those strange kids again that were playing in the woods. Like, I don't know. I want to interview Tony Boney or Boney Tony and find out what he was thinking from that side of the story, or if he even remembers it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow. And
so that
he's called Boney Tony because he's skinny.
he is very skinny.
Okay.
We were inventive or creative.
Yeah.
It just rhymed with Tony, I think. I don't think he was like insanely skinny.
He wasn't known as that. It was just you and Tom saying
Yeah. We didn't really have a nickname for Patrick, but we never really saw him. We saw Boney Tony a lot.
I mean, yeah. This guy's digging holes everywhere.
So it kind of dispelled this fear. I think that emboldened us. Like, he's nothing. He's just a kid having his own story. Like, they're probably even lying about this guy. Like, another thing we found out that kind of dispelled this mythology of Old Man Johnson. You're probably, some of you may recognize Old Man Johnson. Old Man Johnson's house sounds like Old Man Johnson's farm. There was a song that was released in 1985. Can you guess what it is?
Old Man Johnson?
No. It was Prince. Prince's release of Raspberry Beret.
What?
Had the line in it, Old Man Johnson's farm.
Oh, okay.
We were blown away when we didn't listen to Prince. That wasn't our like go-to at 10. Let's listen to Prince, but we knew he existed.
Yeah.
And somehow or another, we found out this lyric And we're like, it's, did they just invent that to like scare us from it? So now we were even more inquisitive. And that emboldened us to get through that barbed wire fence and figure it out. We're like, it's in a song. It's real. We still had some kind of like, what bizarre thing is happening going on here? We get on the other side one day of that barbed wire fence, and it's chilling quiet. I remember we didn't want to make a sound. He did not let out a fart. We didn't scream like girls or anything. We were serious. We have become men in this situation.
All right.
We weren't messing around. We stalked that place like ninjas. The shadowy thing was like a trailer, like an old, like semi-trailer. And it was all this garbage around. It was like this guy was a hoarder, but he put everything to the side of the woods, and that's what we saw, like all these like little things that were just shadowy from our side of the woods because they were lit behind by the sun in the open space. So it was all dark silhouettes.
Yeah.
But then as we got on the other side, we could see it's this junk and garbage and deadly quiet. And there was a lake over there. I was like, Tom, stay away from that body of water. And I remember us making this joke, like, don't go near it, you're going to fall in. And we explored further, and then there was a house. So it was like open space. We realized there was a pond or a lake right there. And there was this house, Old Man Johnson's house. And it had this like frosted glass, like old 70s, 60s frosted glass partition. It was like the cubes of the big, thick frosted glass, like formed into a wall. Very retro, all white. So very odd that was painted all white and had this like frosted glass already like giving us these vibes, right?
Right.
We get closer. We sneak up closer. Tom was a little bit more daring. He was 2 years younger than me, felt a little bit more invincible or something. I don't know. But he went up to the house and he was behind the corrugated glass. Someone came out. We ran back and walked away. Didn't see him. What is that? It's like, I don't know. I didn't see anything. I didn't see the person, but I think it was a woman. I don't think it was a man. I get close to the house. We explore around it. And we see a sign on the side of the house that says office. We look at each other. We walk beyond the house. A little bit more confident, a little bit more, okay, we're not as afraid. The smoke or the veneer or the mystery of whatever was happening was easing away from us. And we go further down this dirt road and we look to our left and look to our right. And it's a trailer park. And this building was the office to a trailer park. And we were quiet the whole time walking through this trailer park. People lived here, and that was the office of the landlord or whatever, probably owned by a woman, not even a man, let alone Old Man Johnson.
Yeah.
But we didn't say anything. We just looked at each other kind of stunned. Like,
Yeah,
part of us knew, okay.
You got played.
We got, this whole thing, this whole summer was like this play on our imagination. They tricked us. We could have accessed that trailer park from a road leading out from the base housing. So we walked home down that road through the entrance to base housing, past a little shopette, which is the first thing we feel. We cut around to the back. We could have cut through the woods to get closer to our house, but we didn't go to the woods. We walked on the sidewalk of our street and went home. And we had sleepovers and we tried to like look back on that. Like, that was crazy. By the end of that summer, we were jumping off the high dive. We were less afraid of things. We started doing other inventive things. Like, we didn't stop creating. It didn't disillusion us so much that we didn't imagine other things in the fear of having them be blown out of the water or whatever. But we didn't go to the woods that much because we felt like we conquered them. We've solved this big mystery and we conquered them. Right. So we did recordings that night at sleepovers where it started out recording us talking, like doing characters and things like that. And kind of like a podcast, I guess, my first podcast. Um, we would test out characters and voices and these impressions that we weren't so good at, but we would try them out anyways. And then it became this supernatural kind of witness thing where when we'd play back, we swore we would hear things in the background. So, we still had fun with our imagination. And then I met Joe, and around that time, Joe is another good brother of mine, brother. And we did Josh and Joe's home videos where we do sketches and stuff. And that was kind of that. I mean, I had formative years after that. But that journey into the woods, that whole year, beginning with that vision in the spring and kind of interpreting it into this journey into the woods, like a hero's journey, like the test, and you got to face the test. You have this vision, you got to face the test, and you got to face yourself. That whole, we didn't realize that as we were going on. We felt it. We were in the middle of it. And it was the Catholicism, being in Catholic school, and Tom and I were both altar boys, that I learned my faith was important as a part of my imagination. And I took that with me. It was very important. So I did figure out that I was balancing faith. Family and friends were actually one part of the branch that was very strong, and that was my love. My faith is kind of my spirit. It's more spirituality. And my imagination, my creativity, that was my mind. So I was balancing all three of those. When I look back on that moment, that's what was coming to fruition. Those are the gems that were in that chest. Those are the gifts that I'd receive later. And that's what that kind of into the woods signified for me. Now, I had other turning points, but that was definitely significant. Tom and I still went to the movies, played pranks, did our, mini podcast thing, whatever, on audio tape. And
like a radio show.
Yeah, we would record and try to hear ghosts on the other end of it. And then Joe and I would make sketches with our video. And then I went through high school. I wanted to get out of Catholic school and go back to public school because I wanted to play sports. I was always playing sports and never really landed on something until soccer came around. And Joe was a big part of that. Joe and I would play soccer a lot. And Tommy too. Tommy played, but Tommy and I did everything together for a while. And we played basketball. And there's footage of us on basketball. The height of our skill level on basketball was being able to synchronize our gum chewing on the court. There's video footage of us playing defense, and it was a lot of this. That was like our idea of, we were chewing gum because we were nervous. We didn't know what we were doing, but we loved Larry Bird and Michael Jordan at the time. And Tom was definitely more into sports than I was. And it wasn't until soccer that I found my groove and getting into comic books around that time. My first comic book was a Daredevil comic book. Nice. Someone gave it to me on the bus on the way to school once, and I never stopped. I would listen to U2 in the comic book store. Unforgettable Fire and October were coming out, and I would listen to them in the comic book store reading my comic books. Read books like, they were all definitive like stories for me, and a lot of them were fantasy fiction, science fiction, and fantasy. And as I was preparing for college, which is another turning point, and this will be quick. There's a lot of things that happened in these years that were very important. But getting into college was something I knew I wanted to do. It was something I knew I had to do. My mom did it later and got her nursing degree through it. And it was very important for me to go to that.
How old was your mom when she finished?
24, 25. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Maybe. She was like 21 when she had me.
Oh, okay.
And I remember going to classes with her. She did Bunker Hill in Massachusetts, I think, for a little bit. Started some courses there. And when we were in Florida, she did some, and then she finished in USC. So she spread it out over these places she went. She got her degree. So for most of my time obviously in South Carolina, I was a latchkey kid, wore the key around my neck, let myself in.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's part of, me learning my independence at that time. And my parents would come home later. But I wanted to go to Boston College. We always did our family trips still, up to Boston. And I was like, I'm done with the woods and the country, but it was so important for me to have that as a kid. I didn't know it then, but I just like the stories in the comic books that I was reading or what I was seeing on TV and movies. Like I wanted to go to New York City. And I had dabbled in theater, but didn't really know. I really wanted to be a writer. I was reading. I had so much fun from reading stuff. I thought I'm destined to be a writer, but I wasn't afraid and to make people laugh or being a class clown, talking out loud in class. And an English teacher saw that. And
This is in college.
this was in junior high.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm getting to college years where I kind of went into theater and I didn't really know that until because I always thought I wanted to be a writer. So I went to college for journalism and communications because I'm sorry, journalism and communications and computer sciences because I was definitely into computers with my friend Tom. Commodore 128, ever heard of it? Commodore 64? No? Google it. Atari game consoles. Come on, we're talking the 80s here. And then Nintendo, of course, and all that stuff, and PlayStation was really big. So really inspirational for us going into my college years. I thought that I was going to do that. But it was theater that pulled me and got me. And the beginnings of that started in this junior high when my English teacher put me in front of the public. And one of the first shows I'm just thinking about is about this. I played this character. I don't remember the name of the story. Some kind of like free royalty kids play, I guess, or something that they didn't. And this character was reading from this book of poetry and he was standing on an anthill. So one of my first big moments was reenacting, using the method acting of when I was bitten by fire ants and using it on stage. It's like, how are you so good with that? It's like, oh, well, I have a story for you. When I was a kid, it doesn't feel good. I specifically remember wanting to go back to public school and leaving the Catholic school because I wanted to play sports with my friend Joe. And that was one of the main reasons why I went to Hillcrest High School and the public school and left the confines of private school. It was at Hillcrest High that I met another Joey, who was a poet and a writer as well. And we connected on that level. And my friend Susan at the time, we all went to the Career Center, which was a community college in Sumter for USC. It was a USC community campus at Sumter. And we did AP level courses there. And then we would come back at the beginning of the day, and then we would come back for lunch at the high school. And then I would get to hang out with my friends and stay there and cut up in classes. And then we played soccer on the team. And then my coach, Mr. G at the time, the soccer coach, wanted us to do another sport. Joey and I always played soccer year round. We did it for our town league, the city league, and we played for school year round. So we're like, Coach, why do we have to play another sport in the spring? Because blah, 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 we play soccer all year round. It's like, no, you got to do another sport. Okay. I chose cross country. And that's when I learned kind of long distance. There's just our coach's thing. I don't know. Maybe I think he felt like I wasn't as athletic. He didn't really know. He didn't want me to lose that. And so he wanted me to continue conditioning throughout the year. The other people on the team, for some reason, were because I showed up at school with no background. They didn't know. I didn't really play sports before then. They really didn't. He didn't really know. And so he had me commit to playing or running cross country in the spring and doing the soccer in the fall. Even though I, again, we played soccer year round. We did indoor soccer for the summer.
Yeah.
We did year round. Regardless,
We got this.
I did the cross country and I learned stamina and long distance, and that was fantastic. But the one thing that I pulled from Hillcrest High School was a lot. I mean, Joey and I the two Joeys and I did our coming of age there, and that was great. And it was preparing for college. And I had the 2 years, junior, senior years, to even think about it.
Yeah.
And we had a guidance counselor who went to a place called Mars Hill College and told us about the Grayson Scholarship. I was second highest, so I guess that's salutatorian under the valedictorian, who was
Okay.
Susan.
Yeah.
And with my GPA, so I had a good chance of getting it.
Nice.
So the three of us decided we would submit for the Grayson Scholarship and go to college in Mars Hill College, which is right outside of Asheville, North Carolina. And it met my mother's foremost priority that it was close to home, that I could drive to and from school and be there.
Yeah.
I had my mind set on Boston. I'm going to BU, Boston College. I'm going to do the soccer scholarship or an academic scholarship. No fail. That's where I'm going. I have family up there, and I'm going to Boston because I am going there to do what I need to do for me, my country, and myself. No, because I wanted to be around family. But all three of us got the Grayson Scholarship. We had to write an essay and to submit. My essay started out with me telling a story of my imagination. I was fighting a dragon, sword fighting in the living room, and I was a young kid. And I would do this. I would sword fight and reenact comic books and superhero stuff, but mainly it had to do with dragons and fantasy. In the dining room next to the living room, it was big. We didn't have a dining table there, so it was a big open room. But my parents would be in the living room watching TV or something, and they would watch me just fight these battles like to no one. And I don't know what they thought. They tell me, we knew you were imagining stuff. We didn't think you were crazy or anything like that. But that's what it would have looked like to any person walking in. Like, what is going on with that kid?
Yeah.
But that was part of my essay, just to bring home this idea that I had this imagination. I needed to find something to do with it. And writing was it. But I loved exploring the world that I was in, researching it. So that's why I thought journalism. And science, though very mathematical, computer science, though very mathematical, was something, what you could do with it was only limited by your imagination. And that was all explaining how I decided what I wanted to do. And imagination was the key to doing it in this essay. I got in, and it was an academic, a full tuition scholarship, except for the last year. We talked about this. It was a kind of thing. You've got partial, it was called a partial Grayson. I think Susan got the full Grayson. I think Joey did too. I'm not sure. But I got partial. So it paid for my tuition up until that last year. So senior year, I was on my own. Anyway, so I was going, that was a lot cheaper than paying full price at BU or Boston College, and I didn't get the scholarships there. And I wasn't good enough a soccer player to get onto those teams, but I did get on the Mars Hill team, and I thought, this is. But the Grayson Scholarship, which paid a lot more, didn't allow me to audition, or didn't allow me to try out for the soccer team. I had to change the tryout dates. It was complicated, I remember, because I had to do a Grayson Scholarship retreat in the woods. We built trails. It was like our community service. So we had to do a certain number of hours for community service for a Grayson Scholarship.
Okay.
So when I was able to postpone my tryouts, I went in there. The team was pretty much already picked, but they gave me, like, I was good enough to make it on the team. But I decided very early on, the coach came to me and had a sit down and said, listen, you need to focus on your Grayson Scholarship. This is not going to work out for us. And so again, denied playing soccer, but it was for the best. I played the club team, the intramurals or whatever. So I was fine. Wasn't my destiny. So college years for me was supposed to be this very smart, educated, had it figured out. That was my major: journalism, computer science. I did the tour of the campus, and the theater there was so unique. I'd never seen anything like it. I was very much aware that it had a theater program when I was signing up for this college in the mountains. And I thought, well, I want to go see theater. I'd probably do a class and it'll help me come out of my shell and hone these skills that will help me in journalism or whatever, whether it be broadcast or whatever I thought I was going to do with that.
Right.
So I was very much aware that it had a theater program. When I stepped into that building, people talk about getting bit by the bug. I had done several shows. I've played Linus in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown in junior high, and nothing really in high school. But that was it. I didn't get bit by the bug then. It was stepping into that theater. And it was an old Baptist church turned into a theater, which again was like a sign. It was like a signal, like that faith and that imagination combining forces again. That's why I had such an energy walking in there. I auditioned for the first show, didn't get into it, but I kept auditioning, and I clearly, slowly but surely, but clearly started coming to focus that I was going to go into the theater department, which is what I did by the second year. And to just kind of, my college years were great. They were phenomenal. I wanted to get away from home. I wanted to get away from that country setting into this. I wanted to move to the city, but Asheville was so beautiful. It was on these mountains. Gorgeous. And just to kind of like compile how important it was to me, I kind of breezed through that. Joey Jenkins, the other Joey, who I went to school with there, Mormon. I dated a Quaker, probably, she was in the theater department my second year. I was at a Baptist college. I myself was Roman Catholic. I thought that very unusual, this blending of philosophies and ideas, but that's what happened in college, I was told. You experiment. And so through the college years, I decided to be baptized Mormon, only to probably kind of drown out the fact that I was trying to come out as gay, but I only accepted bisexual, and that was only with a few certain people that were there that really knew that.
Right.
Otherwise, I acted completely straight, joined a fraternity, and all these things you do to hide certain aspects. But it wasn't important. I wasn't frightened by it. I was lucky. I was fortunate. I had a good support system. I was in all the shows. I got to play at least some way or another. I was involved or behind the scenes, in front of the scenes. I loved it all. I absorbed it all. And they had a professional theater company, a repertory theater company called Southern Appalachian Repertory Theater. And I did that in the summer. So I was pretty much up there year round at a certain point for the first couple of years of college. And I got to play Hamlet in Hamlet, Tom in Glass Menagerie, and I had a monumental role as one of the lead singing parts in The Merry Widow. Not a musical singer at all, but it allowed me to prove how comfortable I could be on stage and in rehearsals. I was in rehearsals and had everybody kind of rooting for me, wanting to root for me to get these parts. I kept on losing my singing parts to my best friend Keith, who he plays another role in it, and my friend Rob Staten too. I lost my singing parts to them because they could sing, but I could hold my own on stage, and that was key to understand. That's where my first comfort of being on stage came. Everything else, yes, it was an energy, had butterflies, and it was exciting, but the Merry Widow performance, if I could get through that, I could do anything. And that led to me doing Hamlet and Tom in the Glass Menagerie, which were like key roles for me. Another big thing is meeting Keith and Rob, who we started Half Past Funny, an improvisational comedy group together. And we toured that region doing improv and teaching in high schools, Buncombe County High School, teaching improv and doing the shows on campus, live shows. such a wonderful experience. It was such a powerful way to learn the power of acting, performance, using your imagination to attach yourself to a role and having the power of improv at your, you know, access, like just to be able to use that on stage. The idea of being on stage in a performance is about limiting your fear so you can access your imagination. Period, cut and paste, put that in. That's what it is. That's what it was for me. So those are my college years. And also, by the time I left college, I had a good friend, Wimberly, who I thought I was going to marry.
This is a woman.
Yes.
So you weren't out yet. You didn't say you were gay yet.
No. I
Okay.
mean, I barely said that I was bisexual. I was okay with that. I was okay with that to an extent because I was in love with Wimberly. And with Erin, who's the Quaker girlfriend that I had.
Yeah.
And they were
What was that like dating a woman and like you weren't like wrestling in your head trying to figure out if you were gay or not? Or were you even
I
trying to
didn't have
figure
a
that out?
model for that. Like this was 90s. I mean, it was maybe just starting to, pun intended, come out in like mainstream, like, oh, here's a gay character here and there. And I remember taking trips to Provincetown outside of Boston, which is a big hub for LGBT communities, and they would summer there at Provincetown. And so we would go to Provincetown and Cape Cod, and I would see two guys holding hands, and I recognized it as something different. Um, I had these great relationships growing up, friendships, like brotherly friendships with men, but it was never about like physical kind of attraction. I loved people. I loved everyone so intensely. There was an aspect of it that I thought, because I was so in my head faith wise in my spirituality, that there was a part of me that thought Satan was taking advantage of my power of love by sinfully being attracted or dabbling in this question about, am I into men?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so that's why I said becoming a Mormon, it seemed to make sense in terms of the spiritual energy I had inside me that I was trying to balance out, trying to figure out. And I had this spiritual energy from the acting and the performance I was doing. It was all connected, but I hadn't figured out this balance yet. It was coming. I didn't know I was coming to terms with it and figuring out, but it was going to happen. Again, I'm lucky. There are people who go through making that decision in their life or figuring that out that don't have a support group and are drowned out by the fears of what that could cause in their life or to their families. I'm an only child. All pressure was on me. Italian, Roman Catholic, wasn't a healthy uh like place to come out. There were fears about that and conservative nature about that your family and friends, if they believed that, would push back. Well, gay, what? Like, okay, figure that out. But my family was also loving. So, but that I wouldn't officially come out until I left college and took my Mormon ass, at that time, my Mormon self, to Boston. But it was mainly to be with family. That's where I was headed, right? That was my trajectory. So I went there. I knew I stayed with my aunt for some time, finally moved out on my own in Winthrop, Massachusetts. And I had a moment my first year kind of going to church, my grandmother being kind of confused by this whole thing, but she didn't really go to church. So it didn't give me much pressure, but it was Catholic. What, you're going to the Mormon church? Well, at least you're going to church,
Yeah.
But the singles ward, which is what they called the breeding ground for coupling in the Mormon faith, you would go to this church specifically that the singles went to so you could find your partner, your soulmate, or your husband and wife. That's what you would go there to find. But the good thing about this, I was devout. I was newly baptized, and I had a fire in me, and it was exciting. Little did I know it was a creative fire that I was trying to fuel, that was the burning sensation that was in there. But it took me to the Harvard University campus because it was so close to that. And so a lot of these singles were going to Harvard or going to MIT in the area there. So very smart people, but not very, they couldn't express themselves very much. No, a lot of them couldn't. Not to say all of them, they're more smart than they were gregarious or talkative or, able to come out of their shell.
Right.
So I would stand up, interpret the Bible, and speak in front of all these people on the or near the Harvard University campus. We had a guest speaker from the Mormon Church. It was someone very high up. I think it was president. That's what they call the head of their church, like their pope is a president. Forget the guys. I didn't do a deep dive to kind of find the background. I forget the name at the time, but it doesn't matter. Here I am on the campus. I was kind of excited about that, dressed up. It's nice. I was just intermingling with the intelligentsia of Harvard University and listening to this guy, this great spiritual talk is very uplifting and I would get tingles talking about the Holy Spirit and all this stuff. I started tearing up and crying. I stayed behind. Everybody was leaving. And I knew it was because I didn't belong here based on their faith, because I had these feelings and I had this attraction toward men. And figuring that out, I needed to figure that out. I never gave it space. I never gave it a chance. The woman I was supposed to marry, that we were talking about this very seriously about, she went down another path. It didn't work out. And that hit me hard. And I was going to move down. There's a possibility of me moving back down to North Carolina to be with her. But that was before all this. I knew that didn't work out. And I was trying to figure out. And I knew I had to figure this thing out, because in order for me to belong, I had to know. And I couldn't fake it. I knew I couldn't fake it. I knew I couldn't repress it. Back in college, I was an ally to an out friend. He was my first kind of model of coming out. And even then it was very, he wasn't like out loud and proud. That was Rick. And he took me to Project Insight, where it was like a support group for people coming up. And there was this gentleman who talked during one of those meetings where he had a full-blown family. He had kids, married, and everything. Had to come out. It was eating away at him, to a point where he was going to cause harm to himself, leave, or something. He didn't know where it could have gone. And he shared his story, and I didn't want that. And that stuck with me. My friend Chris, also someone from college, was very important to me. Chris with a K. He was very proudly out and very strong, confident. I learned a lot from that. And I remember calling him after this time in Harvard University and saying, after this meeting, it's like, I've got to make a decision. And it wasn't deciding to be gay. Because, people would argue that wasn't a decision. It's in you. You were born with it. I was born this way or whatever. I very easily made decisions that could affect how I dealt with that. And I made a decision to deal with it. And I said, I'm going to try to start being in a relationship with a guy and see what happens. That's what I was going to do. That was like the first couple of years being in Boston. It was very weird time in my life. I did meet Ron, this young Italian kid I learned a lot from, and he learned a lot from me. And we both kind of came out to our families together through our relationship. And then I started, what am I here for? I need to start going into acting. That's what I was going to do. I'm trying to get to New York. I'm slowing this process down, trying to figure this out, but I knew I needed to figure it out first. Did that in Boston. Started joining this troupe where we did experimental theater. Can't remember the name of this group, but I remember doing all these weird shows. And part of our rehearsals, this guy who ran the theater company was into computer programming and graphic design at MIT. And he had money from whatever he was doing, and he used that money to produce theater in the north end of Boston, which is really exciting. It was a fun time in my life too. And we did a lot of rehearsals on the MIT campus. Again, amongst this math and sciences, here are a bunch of theater nerds doing theater in one of their classrooms. It was very hard to ignore that fact. So there's one very significant thing that happened in Boston that would catapult me to the next stage of my life. And that next stage would take me to New York. That's where I was going. And the incident that happened was I got hit from behind by a drunk driver. Best thing that ever happened to me. Driving down the street, stopped at a stoplight, car parked in front of me. I get hit from behind in my old Nissan Sentra that I drove from South Carolina to North Carolina college and all the way up to Boston and had it for years until this day. I still drove it well after this. It got totaled.
Oh, wow.
I remember camping in the mountains of North Carolina. It's a hatchback, and we would camp out the side of it. And I loved this car. I would have taken it to New York if I could. But it got totaled by this drunk driver. It happened in front of a fire station, and a police car was right across the street. I didn't hit the car in front of me, so it was all this guy's fault. He blew whatever on the breathalyzer that he was drunk.
Yeah.
I was lucky. I got whiplash, and my chair was already broken, and it just fell back. So I went forward, hit it, and fell back. But it could have been very fucking dangerous, excuse my French, because there's a piece of board holding up my front seat. It could have ejected into the back of my spine and paralyzed me.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there was 2 accidents in my life that it could have killed me. My mom was coming to pick me up from a school back in Florida when I was really young. She got totaled. She was coming to pick me up. She got totaled on the way to picking me up, and it twisted her seat around. She still has back problems from this. She got hit by a drunk driver in a Nova, which is a big tank of a car. Wow. And she was in a Dodge Colt or a Toyota Corolla or something. And the front seat was jammed up and twisted. I would have been killed because I would have usually sat in the back behind her or in the back seat. My mom put me in the back seat all the time.
Yeah, jeez.
Yeah. So I was lucky in this particular situation because it was all this guy's fault. And I got a settlement, not right away. It took about a year of $15,000. And that's what I used to move to New York or LA. I still deciding between those two. My friend Keith, who I did improv with, was part of a sketch comedy group called Living Room Live. And I would go up and visit him. I didn't see him shoot. He was still like trying out for it. He didn't quite make it then, but he had his eyes on it. I was like, that sounds like fun. That sounds great. We should be doing this together. He wanted me to be writing with him, wanted me performing with him. He's like, yeah, I'll get you in, but you have to move up here. You can't be doing it from Massachusetts. I am. I'm just waiting for the settlement to come through. I remember seeing U2 concert. I think it was 2000. It was the Elevation tour. Loved U2. And the songs from that album, Beautiful Day and all these things, like filled me up with so much hope. And I saw Tina Turner. It was one of my first concerts, actually. It was Tina Turner, then U2. And they all gave me this kind of excitement, this kind of energy. And another reason for moving to New York, and I made that decision, was because my friend Chris from college and beyond wanted to move in. He was living in New York, and he was doing these cruise ships around the bottom of Manhattan Island, right. Spirit cruises, singing Broadway songs to everybody, all the tourists and stuff. So he made good money. He had a friend, my friend Rick, who I did Half Past Funny with as well, Rick and Keith. They were both living in the same city, never met up. Chris and Keith and Rick were living in the city, never met up. One of my other friends, Bethany, who was also in our theater department in Mars Hill, never met with any of them, but met up with Chris every now and again. So these people, it was just weird for me. You're living in the same place, but you don't talk. How does that happen? You guys are around the same. You guys were so close. Like, what? I'll be all over it. But that was a reason, like a support system. I've always wanted to be in New York. And I was willing to wait to go to LA thinking that was going to be the break. That was what it was going to do. Nope. Decided on New York. So took my settlement money, saved it up, paid off my rent, said bye to my friends. My who's now my ex at the time, Ron. We decided to break up because I was going to move on, and he moved with me. We packed everything up in a U-Haul. He was going to help me move into my apartment. We were going to leave Monday, and this was in 2001. We were going to leave on a Monday. We thought we could leave at night and avoid all this traffic to New York. And I was like, no. I don't know. I don't want to drive in these unknown roads at night, not being able to see where we're going. And we didn't have Google Maps at the time, but we had a thing called MapQuest where you could punch in the address and it would print it out. And you had to follow those. There was no rerouting. You know, you had to follow them to a T. So I was like, I got these instructions. We're going to leave Tuesday morning, early in the day, have all the daylight. That Tuesday morning was September 11th, 2001. And that's when I moved to New York City on 9/11.
So the city's crashing and you're building your home. That's crazy. Yeah.
My
what was that like?
I remember the whole day. I remember this whole time period. So we didn't have cell phone. I mean, we did have cell phones, but I had it turned off. We were listening to music on the way down.
Yeah. So you had no idea.
We didn't really have cell service and didn't have no idea what was going on. We come to Danvers, Connecticut, which is right before you get into New York, coming down 95 or whatever. And it was a pit stop there. We started hearing talk about a plane crash. And I was like, what? A plane crash in New York City? Wow, that's going to mess up traffic. And it's like, we better get moving. Let's go. And I got a signal there. So I was able to listen to these messages. And there was a lot of them. There was like 50 messages from my mom and family. Josh, you there? You got to turn around. Plane crash in New York City. I'm like, the whole city? A plane crashed into the whole, like, what do you mean? Like, what does this mean? And my friend Chris, who was signing I had already signed my portion of the lease the week before. And I have an image on that bar over there that I took with Keith. And it was of the World Trade Centers looking up, and there was like a misty fog.
Yeah. This was like a week before, right?
This was a week before. Yeah. And I was with him, and Keith and he knew I signed my part of the lease. We're on the Brooklyn Bridge smoking cigars and saying, we're going to own this city. We're going to do it. We're going to make it happen. We can make it anywhere. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Right? Right. Yeah.
Frank Sinatra.
And so fast forward a week ago, Chris was signing his lease and he was on the 7 train platform. He saw smoke coming from a building. He was like, Josh, there's a building on fire here. Jeez. I think you should turn around. So I did. My initial instinct was go right back to Boston.
Right.
Without even thinking about it. I got all these messages. I was trying to call my mom. Nothing was getting through. She's probably on the phone with somebody else. Everybody was calling somebody in this not really good, like, cellular service, you know? So I turned around and I had a moment where I said, wait, I got my life in the back of this truck. I've already signed a lease. My home is there. My new apartment, my home is there. I have nothing to go back to. I'd go back to family in Massachusetts, but I'd be crashing on a couch, storing my stuff where? What would I be doing? I felt, you know what? We got this apartment. Let me figure out what's going on. Let me drop my stuff off at my apartment. Then maybe I leave. Maybe I have to leave the city. But we already had the first month paid for, you know? And Chris just signed and paid his first and last and all that. So it was a done deal. Legally. And so we went. And either directions went to the Whitestone Bridge. And if they redirected me, if the bridge was closed, because they were starting to close bridges getting into the city, we're like, we got to turn around. That's it. We got a full tank of gas. Let's go. We did. The news channel was on. We were on AM FM radio. It was giving news, and they were like, we closed the Whitestone Bridge. And I just passed an exit going back. I think it was going back the other way. I don't remember. I was like, we got to get on that exit. Let's go back. The bridge is closed. We're going to be sitting here forever. In a U-Haul truck, mind you. I pull it in reverse off the shoulder of the road. I go back on that exit. I'm like, why is nobody on this exit? It's like, is this exit leading to someplace else? You just get this fear in your head.
Yeah.
So I juked. I'm like, I'm not going off this road. And I went off this other road that led me under the street that I was on. And I was like, I don't know where I'm going. I'm locating. I'm off the map. MapQuest did not take me here. I don't know where I'm going. And this old guy in a very big car said, "Hey, follow me. They still have the Throg's Neck Bridge open." I don't know what that means, the Frog Bridge.
Yeah.
But I'll follow you. Lead the way. Something told me to trust them, so I did. I heard frog. It was the Throg's Neck, come to find out, which was one bridge down. Yeah. So I guess they were closing the bridges closest and going down Long Island. Oh. So I gone in through the Throg's Neck Bridge. Yeah. The street, I don't know if you know this, 24A, 25A or something, is Queens Boulevard that comes right past Whitestone Bridge and the Throg's Neck Bridge. So I was on the same MapQuest. I was back on MapQuest. Yeah. If I got over the Throg's Neck Bridge, we did. I got over it. By luck, by chance, who knows? And got to my apartment in Jackson Heights, Queens, which come to find out is not the best part of Queens. Yeah. Just so you know. We didn't know that at the time. We thought we had a good apartment. Yeah. And me and Ron at night, we got stopped by police along the way. It's like, "Hey, what do you got back of the truck?" It's like, "My life." It's like, "Are you moving here?" It's like, "Yeah, you picked a good day to move." I heard that so often. Like, I know, tell me about it. Yeah. I made this decision. I made this choice. Constantly do I look back on that? It's like, what if I made the other choice? Yeah. What if I went the other way?
Might be in LA right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And is this a good choice or a bad choice? And no matter how I looked at it, I would come up to the same conclusion. No matter how I looked at it, I could prove either one of those. I could prove it was a good choice, and I could definitely, the obvious bad choice. The world is falling apart, and you're moving right in the ground zero, pun intended. Yeah. Yeah. Just things falling apart. But
what an experience.
Ron helped me move all my life out of that U-Haul into our new apartment, listening to Frank Sinatra. It was a CD I had, and we were just chilling. It was very soothing. It was calming. It was actually very calming. I remember that specifically. Nice. And it settled me, made the right choice. I had that U-Haul truck. I had to turn it the next day, but U-Haul was closed. Mm. So I spent the next couple of days being a taxi service and and gladfully, like, helping my friends who I knew there. You need to go get groceries. Let's go. You need to ride to the subway station's closed, but you need to ride to this place so you can get to work. Let's go. I used it, and I didn't get charged for that U-Haul at all, but it became a car for all of us to get us around. Yeah, and it was great. I had a job lined up through the temp service because my friend Rick had a friend in the temporary service, so she set us all up. That job was gone because it was down in Lower Manhattan. Right. And Chris's job was singing happy-go-lucky Broadway show tunes down the bottom tip of Manhattan. So that job was gone. Nobody was taking a cruise down Lower Manhattan or around the Hudson there. Right. So after the first year of living in this new apartment, I had my first eviction, my first and only ever eviction. And, New York was, if college was my next Into the Woods story, my next chapter, going to New York was my next Into the Woods. And I learned so much, like
the concrete jungle.
Yeah, it truly was. I can really speed through that. I mean, New York was is a great experience. It led me to New Jersey and to you and to everything that we're doing today. I definitely made the right decision. Moving to New York with my friends who would later scatter out of fear of living in the city or not being able to handle it because it was so expensive and all that pressure. That pressure cooker can create diamonds or it can turn things to dust. And I saw it happen, I think I'm one of the diamonds in that story. So many people are, but I got to perform Living Room Live with my friend Keith. We took that experience of writing a new show weekly, very much a la Saturday Night Live, which was definitely a goal of mine. I would love to have done that. I auditioned many times for many different things. Did a few shows here, but it was Living Room Live that kind of set me up with writing sketches on a regular basis, regular weekly basis. We would do the show on a Tuesday night in this Irish bar called the Parlor on 96th in Amsterdam.
Oh, nice.
There was a basement in this Irish bar, and that's where we performed. And we would meet up. So we did the shows on Tuesdays. We would meet up at a friend's apartment in the city on a Wednesday and present sketches that we have written, what we're going to do, and design the next show for the next week. We would rehearse them, run through them briefly, very briefly, have a few drinks, eat something, and that would be it. That would be our rehearsal. And Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we would call around, meet up. Hey, did you think about this sketch? Oh, we changed it here, and send people that, oh, here's the new script. We wouldn't get to rehearse it again until before the Tuesday show. We would get down to the bar early and run through it and rehearse some of the changes, and it was very much the seat of our pants. It was exciting. It was thrilling. Monday, I would write new sketches for Wednesday, but then I would try to focus and memorize my lines for Tuesday. So it was crazy and it was exciting and I loved it. Eventually it disbanded. There were a lot of families in that group, and so they went different ways, and it got me to perform at Gotham Comedy Club. I did me and my friend Keith, who did Half Past Funny, Living Room Live. We joined up with this producer from Comedy Central, Jason Chow, who with our help produced Sketch Fights, which was like this competition comedy event that took place where we had street teams, meaning sketch groups from the city who performed live, competing against sketch groups that performed either on Comedy Central or MTV. Spike TV was just coming out at the time. That's where I ran into Ed Helms, Robert Engel. There's so many other names at that time that were just at that time were just up and coming. I would see them perform on the stage. I'd be with them on the stage, and I couldn't believe it. And it was a great experience.
So what are your thoughts on that? Like touching that world and like drifting in it for like or just being in it.
Every time that I was in New York, every day, every time I did a show or performed something, I was like, this is it. You know, I thought I was on a trajectory to making it. And I was making it. I was doing it. I was performing for a living. Now, when I was performing, it wasn't paying for my living. I had to get bartending jobs for that and serving jobs. But creatively, I felt alive and energetic. So I knew I was doing the right thing. I knew I was where I needed to be. I was exploring this great, beautiful city, and it felt like I was so close. So Sketch Fights was amazing. It was electric seeing these people that were in front of a camera getting paid to do kind of doing what we wanted to do. But it was hard to break in. We realized by doing this, so many people were coming together. We saw how many people and how hard it would be to make it. But here we were producing something that brought this together. We thought surefire. We sat down, we had meetings set up for Comedy Central and Spike TV to do a sketch show. That's where we were headed. That's where we were going. That's what the opportunity was at stake. We thought those things were possibilities for us. We were so close, we could taste it. And Jason had already been producing like Crank Yankers and other stuff that was on TV. He was associate producer for those and trying to make it in his own right as a producer. And he was already there doing it. And we met people who were there. And we knew that we were strong performers, and we did strong sketches to host and open this. And people knew our names.
Right.
But it was so close to being just enough, but it wasn't.
What made it not enough? Like what was
I don't know. We didn't have the sit downs with the people that we needed to. We had sit downs and we talked to people, and we thought that was going to be what they were going to take. We thought Sketch Fights was going to be, it was a great idea for a TV show. You would get sketch groups doing different sketches, so you wouldn't stagnate like Saturday Night Live. Love it as an institution, but you always hear about the sketches and they would just stagnate because you had the same writers and performers for the longest period of time, writing a lot of times some of the same stuff. Same thing with Mad TV and other sketch shows at the time. It was controlled by, the Ben Stiller show. Okay, that's Ben Stiller's brand of comedy, and this is what he would do, and it would kind of burn out. It would be like the same kind of comedy. But bringing in sketch groups from different areas and having the audience weigh in and judge, oh, that's funny, your sketch, with a wink and a nod, would be a lot of fun.
Right.
So you had that competition show and you had the sketch, you had the comedy show. It was a variety of funny stuff. And maybe the people thought, well, how do you pay for that? Like, how do you produce that? Like, how do you pay people who are coming on that competition show to do it? And maybe it was too complicated. Maybe we didn't have that all figured out. But it catapulted Jason's career as a producer. You got to produce a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and that became a good thing. And
this is Jason Chow you're talking.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
what about your friend Chris?
Well, Keith was in the group.
Oh, Keith.
And we went on to produce a thing called Below the Belt, which was at the Belt Theater on 26th between 7th and 8th in the Garment District, hence the name Belt. It was right next to the Zipper Theater, no joke. So it was an up-and-coming theater, and they wanted a sketch variety show. So we performed that. It led us to doing another live show. Not filmed, we thought we were abiding our time, but we were going to keep going with sketch comedy and writing our own group. And it became like, it's like when bands get together and they do a super band.
Oh, yeah.
They get the best of different areas. So we put together a
Audio
sketch
Slave.
team. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so we plucked, some people that we knew from different groups to be like a super team. Like once a month, we would do a regular show. And in the meantime, I would host on a more weekly basis. So more often, I would host a comedy variety show, which would have stand up, and it would have a band, it would have music, and it was mainly stand up. But we would feature a sketch in there. It's more of a variety show that was, improvisational at best because it was a weekly show. We had to put it together in a week.
Yeah.
And that went on for some time until the Belt Theater was taken over by burlesque, which was popular at the time. More people were going to the burlesque show than were going to a comedy show on a Thursday night. That's what it was. And then I took sketch fights and started producing at the People's Improv Theater, Pitt Theater. And that went on for some time, and that was really successful and it was a lot of fun, but it was just me. Keith had taken off with his wife, and they started a family in Massachusetts,
Oh, nice.
the western part of the state.
Yeah.
So that was fantastic. And Chris and I were still together. We had adventures in the city and stuff. And sketch fights kind of burnt me out when I was at the People's Improv Theater. I was getting the bands and I had to produce it. I got to perform and do the opening and host the show. I loved it. I was really good at it, but it was also very exhausting. And I think my personal life suffered in terms of finding relationships and stuff. So I felt like that had to change, and I had to get back to auditioning. Instead of creating my own stuff, I had to get back to auditioning. New York, New York, what are you doing to me?
New York!
Here we are.
Here we are.
2000, out. It all kind of blends together for me.
So, personal life, struggling a little bit. So you needed to take a break from all the
I felt like I
comedies.
did. I felt like I needed to do that. I did this. I took my weekly variety show to Broadway, Caroline's on Broadway. It was a great success. And a lot of the comedians there loved it. They loved what I was doing and performing with. And I had them, they got material for that. They got to say that they performed on Caroline's on Broadway. They got a VHS tape. I don't know how I didn't get a tape of that whole show, because I was in the whole thing hosting and introducing each act and introducing the bands. And I was on Caroline's on Broadway. but I was missing little beats here and there because it was all on me. And then I was hosting sketch fights on a monthly basis at trying to do it seasonally at People's Improv Theater.
Right.
It was a lot, and it was great, and it was exciting. But then you had the city, and that wears you out too. It's like vibing with energy and shaking you constantly, but you feel great. It's like a drug.
Yeah.
So personally, I wanted to find that someone, and I had relationships that would peter out or Paul out. It's an Easter egg. For some of you that know. Anyways, but at this point, I had moved to Jersey, but I was constantly in the city. So I wasn't committed to Jersey yet. It was like we're getting to know each other and falling in love. Everybody had the stigma about, you moved to New York, you better live in New York. You can't say you went to New York if you're living in Jersey. It's like, says who? Prove it to me. Because I'm doing it and I'm loving it because I get to take a break from that pulsing city.
Yeah.
Like under your feet, the concrete pulses. It does.
Yeah.
And so I got to take a break from that and see the city at a distance and get perspective. It was like, once again, living on Elder Drive, looking into the city, looking into the woods and knowing I'm going to get back there. I'm going to conquer that. And I did. I was conquering it. And all the fears I had about it were from my imagination, things that I put in there. And I knew I could find someone and fall in love, and I did. And his name is Jacob. Easter egg. We call him Jake. And that was the beginning of that time when I was going to focus on that, but I was still performing on a very regular basis. I was starting to write more. I meet this kid. All this energy. I say kid. That's what people from the Northeast do. Hey, this kid, this guy over here. Also, he was 23. I don't know. When did I meet you? Oh, it's you, by the way. Spoiler alert.
No. I was 20 when you met me.
20?
Yeah.
Oh, it all blends together. Woo! Literally twice your age. And and I met other people that I would perform with and work and do projects with that would excite my soul. Tara, we wrote a one-woman show together for her, and we did other projects with her to catapult her career and stuff. And I did that with my friend Drew and Adam and Chris and all these people, and there were all these hopes of other projects taking off. But here I am sitting next to you with the projects that we cannot wait to grab hold of and take the reins of.
Yeah.
And I take with me that story of getting into the woods because that's exactly what it is. Each time, each chapter of my life, there's a period of coming of age, learning about these gifts that I'm supposed to receive later in life. Always had this gift of love. I had a theater professor tell me the reason why you're good live on stage is because you put your love on it, and people love you on the stage. I was like, okay, enough.
Just take the compliment.
But I know I can't take a compliment. I always have to whatever. But so I feel like I've learned that. I'm understanding my mind. I think I've got to grasp my spirit. I'm balancing these three gifts. By the way, all of us get and all of us have access to. But maybe we don't think about it. Maybe we don't try to interpret it and be mindful of them. And that's always been my goal and my mantra. Try to balance these things. Because in the balance, you find exaltation, you find excitement, and I know that what I'm doing is giving me life. It is giving me energy to move forward. And I'm glad I get to do this with you. And that's where that origin has led me to. The journey continues, Satirius.
Yes, it does. There's a lot more mountains to climb. cities to conquer.
And woods to traverse through.
Yes.
And we're doing it with you,
The people, the gentlemen.
the masses of one, maybe two people
Yes.
that are out there listening to us.
Yes. But it's all right. Every, humble origins. That's why we gave our origins. Well, Josh's
And-
story
The theme music. Come on, you know.
and the theme music.
Dum 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 bum 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 bum.
That's Conan the Barbarian.
Anyways, we were doing that in the sauna the other day.
Yeah.
The opening to Conan the Barbarian. Because why?
Because we just went to
Don't
the
you know
gym
already?
and we felt like Arnold
We worked out,
Schwarzenegger.
and we need big drums to hit. Boom, 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 boom,
We picked up
boom,
weights and we put them down and then we felt
The
powerful.
lamentation of the women.
Yes, yes, no.
Ridiculous. God, it was so good. It was so sentimental, and we just ruined it.
No, it's part of the character.
We're supposed to be gentlemen.
We're gentlemen, that's right.
There's
Gentle.
nothing gentle
So-
about that.
Yes. Joshua Callahan's phenomenal story.
Thank you. Thank you.
We
What being 46 does to you.
yes.
Gives you stories.
We are here now. Thank you for listening. We have been the Gentlemen Sit Down
We have been and will always be the gentleman sitting down
discussing.
with you.
I said discussing, not disgusting.
They know what you meant.
I had to clarify. I had to do it. All right, well, thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. Peace.
Peace.